Hi everyone. Today's topic will be the independence movements in Africa, including that in the West African nation of Ghana. The colonization of Africa it was really sort of a long process. There was no moment when it occurred in one day or year in really any of the countries. It was a process that generally was taking place in the mid to late 1800s. Certainly by the early 20th century, most of Africa had been colonized. There were two really notable exceptions in Africa, Liberia being one of them in West Africa. Liberia had been established as a colony for freed American slaves. But by 1847 it had established its independence. And even though it was nominally independent, there still was a lot of European, but especially American, economic domination there, especially with the rubber companies. The other exception being Ethiopia. Ethiopia is the one country in Africa that really was never colonized. There was a brief period around the World War II area where it was sort of occupied by the Italians, but that was not a real true colonization. It was brief. And so Ethiopia sort of stood out in Africa as kind of being romanticized and heroicized, not just by Africans, but black people around the world, black people that ancestors had been impacted by the African diaspora. By the 1920s and 30s, you have increasing ideas of nationalism and even Pan-Africanism in Africa. It's important to understand that really throughout much of African history, most of the time loyalties would be to smaller areas. It could be to a tribal group, it could be to an ethnic group. And the sort of national conceptions that we have today, if you think of Ghana or Nigeria or something, a lot of these were more modern constructions. But anyways, one of the major sort of turning points in terms of African independence movements was the impact of World War II. Now just think about it. You think World War II and the Allies, including the United States, have these sort of grand ideals, and they claim to be standing up for democracy and sort of self-determination. But then there was that contradiction. It's sort of like you're saying to Germany through World War II and Japan, you can't just take over these countries. Only we can do that, right? So they certainly had done these similar types of things in really throughout the world, but especially in Africa. So it gives them, the African leaders that are pushing for independence by this period, it gives them a little bit more of a rhetorical way to approach it. So let's focus on Ghana for a moment here. Undoubtedly, the leader of the independence movement in Ghana was Kwame Nkrumah. And indeed, he probably is the most significant person in all of the independence movements in Africa, and sort of got the ball rolling in a sense. Certainly was not the first to advocate for it, but became very influential in Ghana. So he actually was in the United States for a brief period, actually not so brief, 10 years, from 1935 to 1945. He also attended the Pan-African Congress in Manchester, England in 1945. This was the 5th Pan-African Congress, and at which you had many African leaders, sympathetic people from Europe and the United States, including you had W.E.B. Du Bois, the famous civil rights leader. So the next video is going to get a little bit more into Ghana directly.